If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you about it. It's free, which is amazing. And there are these really cool creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it's easy to be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts. And you get to make money with no minimum listenership, which is really cool. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started right away. Yoga teachers, mindfulness leaders, and energy workers, are you ready to stop side hustling and start making an income doing what you love? Welcome to the Marketing Off the Mat podcast. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we'll dive into conversations with successful creatives in wellness, business, marketing, and more to uncover practical methods to take you from A to B and have some fun along the way. My name is Jessica Cross, and I'm so excited to be here with you. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode. It's Jess, and this is Marketing Off the Mat. I'm thrilled to be sharing this conversation that I had with my friend, Cassie Paton. Cassie is a copywriter and the founder of Metal and Tonic. She creates potent stories for gutsy entrepreneurs. She also helps service providers whose messaging is bland, out of date, or even spineless write website and email marketing copy that's punchy, powerful, and persuasive so they can attract more dream clients and run the businesses that they love. She uses strategy and empathy and takes values-first approach to help you unlock the language that makes your dream clients be a little obsessed with you. And this is all about branding, my friends. Branding is much more than just the beautiful colors, the logo, the fonts. We dive way deep into defining values and how it affects and helps you create copy that tells your story and attracts the type of students and clients that you want to work with. I know you're going to love Cassie as much as I do. Let's take a listen. Hey, Cassie, how are you?
I'm so good, Jessica. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk today.
Oh my gosh, yes. I love everything that you're bringing into the world, and I know this is going to be such a helpful conversation for not only me, but everybody who's listening today too. So thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely.
So, okay, tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about your career journey and how it brought you to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, it has been a journey. I've been a writer in so many capacities for over a decade. I was a journalist for many years. I worked in marketing. I did a lot of freelancing, you name it. I did all types of writing, and back in the day, didn't really have a niche. And then I actually spent about 5 years in real estate on the support side. So very much behind the scenes, which was amazing for building up business chops. But I finally decided that I was ready to build a full-time business of my own. I really wanted to meet other like-minded business owners and help them tell their stories in a way that just, helps them stand out and be true to themselves, because that's my jam. So I left the full-time job earlier this year and have been rocking and rolling ever since.
Oh, good for you. I know it's so, at least from my personal experience, to step out of the full-time world and into your own thing. It's like all the feelings. It's exciting and exhilarating, terrifying, and everything in between.
All in 1 hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Definitely a roller coaster per hour. That's so cool. Well, okay. So you've always been a writer. You've used that in various ways through your journalism career, and then also helping, from a real estate side of things. What made you get into writing for other businesses? Like what brought you into that, and what made you so passionate about writing copy with them?
Yeah. Well, I realized, like, when I thought about all of the skills that I'd gained from all of the roles I've had, and the things that I was not only good at, but really enjoyed, because sometimes it's hard to separate those two. But I really, really enjoyed like one-on-one conversations very much like this, where you're just connecting with somebody you've never met before. And ideally, hopefully, they're really passionate about what they do, and that comes through. And you get to be the one to help them like make that come out on the page and speak to their ideal clients. Like that just, that is so fun for me. And I thrive in those like copywriting brief conversations where it's like, I'm going to dig a little further. I'm going to dig a little further and pull out the details that make any entrepreneur or business owner unique and interesting, whatever it is that lights them up. And I just felt like website copy, first of all, it's one of the most important places to have really high quality copy. And then of course, email marketing, right? Which is that ongoing relationship building avenue. It made a whole lot of sense. And I have found it to be extremely rewarding, especially just when you have that moment where a client's like, that's exactly what I would have written if I could have written that. I want to give everyone that kind of feeling. Whether they work with me or not, to help them get there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's almost like you're too close to it when you're the business owner to be able to verbalize or, put it down, keyboard to laptop or whatever that is. And it's nice to have kind of that impartial person who's an expert and bringing all of that vernacular in to say exactly what you want to say. That's incredible.
Yeah. It takes time, it takes trial and error. But it is so important because everything that sells, your services or your brand, whatever it is, everything that sells comes down to relationships and words. So relationships meaning like the actions that you follow through on, with the promises you make to your clients or your audience. But stories sell, sales pages sell, your calls to action sell, and copy is the foundational element in all of those things. And luckily, everyone can write words, which is great because it means that when you are just starting out in your business, you can DIY that for a while and it can get you pretty far. But as you go on in your business, not everyone knows how to write compelling copy. So it's just part of my job as a copywriter to really demonstrate the value of that and what powerful copy can do for your business.
Yeah, it's almost nice, like you said, that we all have the ability, or many of us have the ability to write and communicate in a way that it is in the visual form. And then, like you said, it takes us a long way in our business. It takes us, and it gives us something to edit. And when you're having someone like you, who's an expert in writing compelling copy, as you said, it's like, okay, now we have a framework. Like, how do we fine tune that?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit in a previous conversation about defining your values. And so what is it about defining our values that improves our copy, and how is that important to our business?
Yeah. Well, I think, it all ties into branding, obviously. And which again, is not something everyone who, is maybe just starting out or still relatively new. That's not the first thing most of us think of. Or if we do, we're thinking about logos and fonts and colors and things like that. But branding is so much more. It's an experience people have with your business. It's the promise you make to them and follow through on, or not. And not every brand does follow through on their promises. And it's the story or a narrative you and your customers create around that experience. So, and that's all very abstract seeming at first. But if you start by defining your values, then that gives you a jumping off point for every other task in branding your business. And I think it's one of the easier, more accessible things to do because it informs everything else, and you can access that information yourself because it's something that's already in you, basically.
Yeah, you just kind of have to uncover it. What's important to you? How do I communicate that?
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's important too, because, more than ever, people care a lot about spending their money with values-driven businesses. So like, this is not just an exercise for big brands. Like you do see those bigger corporations and they have those very stodgy, pages where it's like, these are our values. And meanwhile, they're like exploiting their laborers left and right. Right. Like sometimes that's what we think of when we think of companies with values, and it can ring very false. So that's what we're not about here. We want to make sure that, our values are true to who you actually are. But I think it was Totally Taryn, social media strategist, really awesome. She and her team, they recently shared a stat on their Instagram that says 80% of millennials say that making the world a better place is one of their top priorities, and that they actually prefer to work with brands who have values or a bigger purpose. So it really is important, because I think increasingly people really care.
80%. That is a huge stat.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we buy from people. We buy from people and not really brands. It's the value behind that brand. It's the person who is sharing what is important to them and what they want to bring into the world that makes you want to buy from them. It makes you want to support their business. It makes you feel more connected to them and their message. And it's less about, like we were saying, the logo and the colors and the fonts and all the beauty around that brand, but it's that message that comes like from the deeply held values that really makes the difference in that partnership.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. Like what you just described about how we make decisions about who to buy from or work with, like it rings true for me. I'm excited to invest in myself or my business or whatever it is when I feel that personal connection with the person who's selling it to me. I'm like, yeah, you're awesome. Like I love your transparency or your quirks or whatever it might be. And that's often what leads me to a decision to work with them over somebody else who offers the exact same service, because, on the surface, two service providers can look very much alike, but they can be completely different experiences.
100%. I love the way you said that. And it's their humanness, it's their energy that you're kind of resonating with. And even though we're probably a lot of yoga teachers listening today, and there's a ton of yoga teachers out in the world right now, and there probably will continue to be, just given how the business is. It's the same thing as when we're talking about who we are and why we offer it is what we offer, and saying that next to another teacher or another wellness provider, whatever it is that you specifically do. It's not that you guys are in competition with one another. It's just that your energy and your brand says something a little bit different that might resonate better with me, and the next teacher might resonate better with Cassie or whomever.
Exactly.
Whoever it is. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Right. I mean, if you're not turning somebody off, then maybe you haven't really tapped into your identity and your branding as much as you should, because we're never going to appeal to everyone. So we shouldn't try. We've got to be really specific about who we are and what we're not too.
Oof, you nailed it. There's this, I don't know, I talk about it sometimes on social media or in different podcast episodes too. But if we think about these vanity numbers and followerships on our Instagram account, for instance, it's like we see people that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and you're like, well, I have 700 followers. Like, my value is different as a person, but it's actually no, because you want people that are engaged with you. You don't want just a swath of people, because like you said, that 100,000 followers may not have been turned off by that account in any way. So maybe they're not actually plugged in with that account in any way also. They're just a number in this sea of people. They're not
Yeah.
actually buying. So yeah, unfollows are welcome too.
Yeah, exactly. You may see yourself out and no hard feelings.
Exactly. There's somebody out there that can help you for sure. And it doesn't have to be me. It can be someone else, right?
Yes. And my dog barking in the background agrees.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. That's when you know it's going to be a good episode.
Right.
Okay. So tell me, specifically for yoga teachers and other wellness business leaders that are listening, how can they go through and define their values so they can write better copy? Do you have a couple of tips for us?
I do. So I'm really big on journaling. And if you are too, I think that's a great way to go, because you can kind of skim back through your notes and look for themes. But you can also talk it out with somebody else or do a voice memo. Just start having a conversation with yourself, basically, and ask yourself a handful of questions. So starting with, what values are important to you personally? Because if you are somebody who, if you're the face of your brand, or you are the main point of contact in your brand, it makes a lot of sense that your personal values that are going to come through in your business. They might not be exactly the same. You might have personal values that don't apply in your business, and that's fine, but it's a good place to start. And I would just say that make sure when you do this exercise, like, write down as many words that come to mind, and then try to then pare that down. Make sure that the words you do choose, and we'll talk more about paring them down in a moment, but make sure that when you do that, you're choosing words that are true to you and your actions, and that they're not purely aspirational. Because it's very easy to kind of see what other people in our space are doing or talking about and feel like you have to do or say those things too. But if it's not something you're practicing, then it's going to ring false. So, and I do mean practicing, like, you don't have to be the perfect embodiment of your value of, say, transparency, right? We don't need you to put everything out there, or it could be a challenge for you, but it's something that's important to you and you actively practice in your life. So start there, and then also revisit your, some people call it your big why, but essentially why you got into business for yourself, because that also reveals a lot about what you value, right? So for someone like me, I wanted to leave my safe, secure, full-time job to start this business, because freedom was something I really valued. The freedom to work with the people I want to, and do the kind of work that lights me up, and work when it feels good for me, right? So that's just one example. And then from there, I like to get a little bit more specific and look at the work in your day-to-day. So what do you enjoy most about your work, and be extremely specific, like get down to the tiniest moments in your business, those tiny but powerful, impactful moments where you're like, oh, I love this, and it could be like when you were teaching someone and they get it, and, you have that moment of connection, or it could be, it could be any number of things, but like, look for those moments where you're like, I am on 100% right now, because that's revealing something about yourself and what's important to you. Also, write down or think about what you do differently from other people in your space. Any point of differentiation is worth highlighting. There's nothing too small or too big. We all have different approaches to the same, service that we offer, or thing we do in our business. And that one is really worth like it can be hard. I know it's really hard to figure out. Well, I don't know. We all do the same thing, but what you might not be considering is, the things you do that you don't even know your clients value. And which leads me to my next tip of look at your testimonials or interview your clients and ask them, what was your experience like? What did you value from this? What did you get out of it? What did you like about it? And you might be surprised by some of the themes that emerge, and realize like, oh, I'm actually most often complimented on, this aspect is like, I didn't even think of that. That's not something I would think to market or advertise as something I do, but not everyone offers that. And people seem to really appreciate that. So once you have kind of looked at all of these questions and really like word vomit on the page, if you were writing about this, like just get it all out. Like, this is not a time to judge your own writing. This is just for you. But then go back and notice all of the words or ideas or themes that frequently come up, and highlight them, circle them, and just start to notice those patterns, because this is where your values are revealed to you. And then you may need to narrow it down. So you might use the word transparency and honesty and vulnerability. So clearly there's something there that's important to you, but pick one of those words. And ideally, once you really start to narrow it down, ideally you have no more than 3 to 5, maybe 6. But once you get there, I think the more values you have, the more diluted they become, the less impactful. So really challenge yourself to narrow that down. And that's how you define your values.
Oh, that's so actionable and applicable. Anybody who's listening right now could grab their journal or random sheet of paper and just start brain dumping and look for trends. And I love what you said about asking your clients what resonated for them with whatever your service was. For me, that's always been, like you said, kind of the most revealing. You're like, oh, I actually didn't even realize that was something that was important. Or sometimes it's so obvious to you because it's just who you are. It's that thing that's shiny and resonates with other people and draws them in. You're like, oh, that's
right.
Really, it seems so obvious, but for other people, they're like, no, like, I don't know how to do that. Or, the way that you approach this just makes so much more sense to me. And that's like where your zone of genius is. I love the way that you said that. And it just taking it and not filtering yourself at first, like just let it all come out so you can see, as you said, the values be revealed to you instead of you hunting for them so hard, so hungrily as you're looking for them.
Right. Exactly. And I think, by doing that exercise, it's a really good way to challenge yourself to start thinking about these types of branding questions if you haven't already. And even if you have, it's also really good to revisit, every year or so, or more, more often than that, if you're rebranding or something like that. Because the longer you're in business, the more you learn about what you love about being in business for yourself and who you love working with and all of that. So anytime you are making those changes to your business or your offers, like it's good to revisit your values. And in fact, I have my values taped up to my desktop. Like they are there in front of me every single day to remind me like, hey, this is what it's all about. This is why you're doing this. And are they represented in every aspect of how you run your business, market yourself, all of the rest? Like it really impacts every aspect of your business, and including your copy.
Yeah, it's deeper and wider than just the copy. It's interwoven into everything that you do, and it can even help you, I imagine, make decisions. Like, is this a good fit for a client? Or is this the right avenue for me to put an offer out there, a course, or, should I take this class and add it to my weekly schedule? Is, just all of those things. It's like, if you have it taped up on your desktop, just like you said, it's like, well, when in doubt, look back and revisit. I love that too. It's like, once, it's not a one and done. Your business grows and evolves, and so do you.
Exactly. Yes. And, as far as like using all of this to improve your copy and anything you're doing, it's obviously, it's only the first step, right? Like this, it gets into bigger questions of, I think, defining your brand voice, which is its own process, but this makes the rest of that just so much easier. And sometimes if you're not sure, like, okay, well, I've got these values and I know something about my copy needs to change, but I'm still not sure how to like take this and improve the words on my website, for example. Sometimes it's actually easier to go back and see what's not working currently. So if you take this new lens through which to look at all of your copy or marketing, go and look at the things that don't really, vibe with your values, that no longer fit, essentially. So, that way, if you're having a hard time, like, well, I don't know what is better, go find the things that definitely don't work, and then just play with words. Like, what are other words I could use here? What words feel like something I would, number one, actually say, right? Because some of us get so caught up in like sounding professional, whatever that means. Actually, like write down some words that align with the values you've chosen for yourself, and just make it an experiment. Like, come up with your branded language list. I did that. And once you like go down that rabbit hole, it's actually really fun, and you can have sort of like your word bank to go to. I recommend I think it's .org. If you are not a wordsmith, go there and see what else comes up.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun. I love deep diving into this thesaurus and see if there's a better way to say what I'm trying to say. And then also too, you find words, as you said, that you would never say. There's a lot out there too. So you're just, it's a fine line. It's like, it's a good question to ask. It's like, is this something I would actually say in conversation or in my stories or something like that? And then, try it on and decide from there. But
yeah, always read it out loud. If you're like, oh, that sounds awful, I can't even bring myself to say that like a normal person. That's how like maybe it's not quite you yet.
Yes. Yeah. Or at all, if ever.
Yeah, right.
That's so generous. It's a really great process. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Of course.
So if you could go back, and I know it's only been a few months since you officially started your business, but there's so many months and years prior to that as you were working in your previous careers, previous versions of you. So I know you have a lot of experience to draw upon, but if there was something that you could go back at any point throughout your career journey and tell yourself that would save yourself a headache or a sleepless night, that you could share with us today and maybe help somebody who's listening, what would that be?
Definitely. Yes. I will say this to my younger self for sure, but also the earliest version of this business. It's not that old, but I think it's, stop looking at what everyone else is doing, because it's so easy to compare yourself and absorb the language or commonly held beliefs of other people in your industry. But then you just end up sounding like a clone. And I think there's a very fine line between research and letting other people in your industry dictate what you're about. Be introspective. Yes, be curious, but be curious about yourself and people you actually want to emulate. And most importantly, your ideal client. And be willing to be rebellious if you hear ideas or see language where you're like, is that who I have to be to make this work? Because absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you feel any kind of resistance to something you hear or see, follow that resistance and define your own thing for yourself.
That is such good advice. There is a wealth of information out there, and it's a blessing, and also sometimes it can feel like a curse because we start to try things on and it can get a little muddy exactly like who we are and what we want to say, especially if we've not gone through a process like defining your values. And even then, we sometimes get on a windy path and things become a little less clear. It's such good advice to say, like, be rebellious and know that you don't have to sound like anybody else in your niche or anybody else other than you. And it can take some time also to figure out what that voice is. I think there's a quote by, I think it's Miles Davis. It says, "Man, it takes a long time to sound like yourself." So you have to filter through all of that. So when you said that, I was like, oh, there's that quote. It's and I think it's true. So that's really generous advice. Thank you.
Awesome. You're so welcome. I'm glad it's helpful. And I love that quote. That is a great quote.
Such a good one. Yeah. Well, what do you have coming up? I hear you have something in the works coming up this month.
Yes. So I will be hosting my second ever Copy Hot Seat in November this month. So this is basically a hot seat is like a live workshop and copy review for anyone who's brave enough to get in the hot seat and would like professional copywriters' eyes on their website. And it's actually a ton of fun. People walk away with personal recommendations for their website copy and quick wins and things they can go do and fix right now. And in this hot seat, we're going to be focusing on your about page, which is commonly the second most read page of every website. And it's a really great place to actually highlight your values. So it's an important one. And if you follow me on Instagram, you can find the details about that at the link in my bio.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put a link in the show notes too, so people can check that out and follow you over on Instagram for all of your wisdom and magic that you've got going on there too. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time and all of the wisdom that you shared today. It's just been such a pleasure. And now I'm curious about that copywriting hot seat.
You're welcome to join. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah. This has been so much fun and I love talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. Well, we may have to have you back on and see what else you have to share with us. There's just so much in the copywriting world and I know you have much to share. So that chat was so great with Cassie. I just learned so much and I hope that you did as well. Definitely check out the show notes for a link to her copywriting hot seat. That sounds incredible. And I'm curious about it myself. I'd love to get her expert eyes on my about page. So I hope that you check it out. Follow her at Metal and Tonic and send her a DM too if you have any questions about copywriting or defining your values. I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening to the Marketing Off the Mat podcast. I love hanging with you as we figure this thing out together. Do you have an idea or something to share with me? Send me a DM on Instagram at jessicacross.co and let me know what's on your mind. I'd be so grateful if you shared this with someone who could use this episode. And if you get a chance, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch you on the next episode. See ya.